gentlemen, may I have your attention, please? The show starts in 3, 2, 1, go.
Good morning, CaneSport. It's June the 17th, 2024. I'm Gary Ferman, the publisher of CaneSport.com, joined this morning by our managing editor, Matt Shodell, and Stephen Wagner as we discuss the news of the day. And the news of the day is the continued euphoria from, I guess we'll call it, visit weekend number 3 of the 2025 recruiting cycle, where Miami has just got a parade of elite talent flowing through Coral Gables. And this weekend was a really good one, Stephen. So I'm going to come right to you because you're in the middle of the action there. And you had the chance to talk to all of the official visitors yesterday as they completed their visits. We'll talk about a few of them specifically, but why don't you first just sum up for us this weekend number 3 of intense recruiting?
Yeah, another really good visit weekend. I think we're continuing to see the one thing official visits weekends always give us is it kind of gives us clarity on which recruits Miami is really willing to roll out the red carpet for. And if you're taking an official visit to the University of Miami, you are going to have an elite experience. Staying in 5-star hotels in Miami, eating at the most luxurious steakhouses, cruising around Biscayne Bay. Mario Cristobal completely changed the way that official visits are run. And credit to, all of the, off-field personnel members who just do so much work behind the scenes that doesn't quite, get as noticed. I mean, Cristobal has put together one hell of a recruiting staff here. I mean, we heard that on Sunday morning, the morning of, some of the recruiting staffers were literally writing Father's Day cards to the fathers of the players who were on their official visits. Then they went out and they had donuts waiting for them in the lobby. They had all kinds of stuff. I mean, they really went all out this weekend, and they had a lot of guys to go all out for. This was a really good visit list. The headliner obviously was DJ Pickett, number 4 overall prospect in the country, number 1 cornerback. I personally think he could play corner or safety at the next level. It kind of just depends where you want to put him. But he is he is the must-get prospect for Miami in this cycle as far as the Canes are concerned. Then, of course, you also had guys like Myron Charles. He's the top 60 defensive tackle, where there's been a lot of buzz around Florida around Florida State and Texas lately. Miami, I think, is still in the mix there. And then Chris Ewald, 4-star cornerback from Chaminade, Madonna, been going to Miami for forever. He's going to take an official visit to Georgia next week. And then at the end of the month, he's going to pick between Miami and Georgia. This was a really, really good list. And I really think that Miami made some moves for a couple of guys this weekend.
All right. So you talk about how they've adjusted the recruiting weekend. Miami recruiting visits have always been great. And from my perspective, all that Mario's done here is he has decided to adapt the Matt Shodell experience to recruiting here in this 2025 cycle. Okay, I'm going to tell you what I'm talking about, okay? Luxurious hotels. Matt Shodell only stays in 4 Seasons or Ritz-Carlton. Okay, meals. I mean, the guy eats in the best of restaurants all throughout South Florida, brings us his reviews on the show on a daily basis, okay? And then, last but not least, the experience on the water, where Matt Shodell goes to wreak havoc on the stone crab populations of South Florida. So Mario said, I've got it figured out. I want all my recruits to live like Matt Shodell. And Matt, he told me to thank you very much for the inspiration, because these recruiting weekends are going over so big. And, we are seeing just unanimous approval ratings on these visits. And your just general thoughts on these recruits from all over the country getting to come to South Florida and experience your daily life.
I have no idea what you're talking about. You got the wrong guy. I live in a wood shed that leaks, and I go out on a tiny boat and try to catch dinner. And if I don't get dinner, I scavenge. So, they're selling these recruits on a dream that doesn't exist, Gary.
Well,
me, a dream that doesn't exist for me.
No, in all seriousness, no. It's working. It's working big time. I mean, Stephen, you've spoken to pretty much almost every one of these kids over the last few weeks at one point or the other. And, official visits, let's be honest, are good times for recruits pretty much anywhere they go. But when you factor in the time that they're having in South Florida and utilizing some of the natural resources of South Florida, like the water, and getting to go out on boat rides and things like that, with what's going on campus, with the new dormitories, the whole resort vibe. I mean, you come to visit Miami, you're like, wow, now it's like, I obviously know tons of people that have attended Miami through the years. Every time somebody goes back to campus and they see the transformation that has taken place there, they are absolutely blown away. So now, imagine a young, impressionable kid coming down here and seeing a lake and dorms that are like resort hotels and, so forth and so on, and facilities that are continuing to get better, a coaching staff that seems to relate really well to these kids. There is a reason. But, Stephen, commits, it's getting close to the time of year where we should start seeing some of these visitors turn in their commitments to the Hurricane coaching staff. Of the guys that came this weekend first, let me ask you, who do you think is closest to pulling the trigger for Miami?
I got to say right now I'm leaning toward Chris Ewald. He's going to Georgia next week. He already has a commitment date set for June 27th. I think there's a very realistic chance that he could be the next guy to go ahead and pull the trigger and commit to Miami. We've only seen one other guy commit on an official visit, we only have seen one guy, period, commit on an official visit so far this year, and that's Timothy Merritt. He committed, I believe it was last weekend. At this point, all these weekends are just kind of blurring together for me. But Chris Ewald, we already know what date he's going to go ahead and pull the trigger. I still like the position Miami is in the best for him. We'll see if Georgia makes a move on his visit next week. But right now, I'm leaning toward Miami more than anyone else. Really long, lanky, athletic, very aggressive defensive back. He's kind of one of those guys who's always sort of hunting for the big play. But I think there's a few other guys who could be on the watch list too. Amari Wallace, 4-star nickelback from Miami Central. He, I think, is as good as any defensive back in South Florida in this class. He is one of those guys from Central. Really, really, really freaking good. Hard hitter. Honestly, sort of reminds me of Cam Kinchins a little bit. Although he has been recruited at nickel. He plays safety at Miami Central. He's played corner before. Miami has told him the entire time, we want you at nickel, and he hasn't had any problem with that. He said, hell yeah, put me at nickel. But I do think that right now he could be getting close to pulling the trigger. The only other school that he's going to take an official visit to this summer is going to be Louisville whenever he goes there next week. I think that there's a really good chance that Miami ends up being the place he commits to. I think Miami still leads. I put an RPM on Miami way back in, I think it was either February or March. I still feel really, really strong about that RPM. I think he's going to be a Hurricane. I think it's just more of a matter of time and when he feels like the moment is right. We do know, no matter what, that he is going to pull the trigger before the start of his senior year. But if the moment feels right, I could see it potentially happening later this month.
All right, 2 5-stars were in the house this weekend. 5 stars are always worthy of their own individual conversation because obviously they are among the best players in the United States. Let's start with Dallas Wilson. Okay, he's from Tampa Bay Tech. He's a 5-star receiver. Miami's been recruiting a lot of receivers in this class. That's a huge priority. Dallas Wilson, Stephen, is committed to Oregon. Your thoughts? I mean, how much is Miami really in this thing?
right now, man, it feels like Miami is not that far behind Oregon at all. I feel like if he's going to go, I think that if he's going to stay in the state of Florida, I feel like right now, I like Miami's chances the most. If someone were to flip him from Oregon, I personally, right this second, I like Miami's chances the most. That might completely change in a week. That might completely change in 2 weeks. But as of right this second, I like Miami's chances the most. Now, I'm also, I also want to clarify that he really, really likes Oregon, and he's committed there for a reason. He has a really good relationship with Dan Lanning. He's got a really good relationship with the Oregon offensive coordinator. He's been really impressed by the offensive production that Oregon's had the last 2 years under Dan Lanning and Bo Nix. Now, granted, a lot of that offensive production came on a team that was very, very heavily recruited by Mario. And certainly Cristobal kind of, left the foundation for Dan Lanning to arrive there and have that kind of immediate success that he had. But I also think that, the results kind of speak for themselves whenever you've looked at Oregon's offense. And I think that's what Dallas Wilson wants to see a little bit. He wants to see results that speak for themselves. It's a little bit less of hearing, about, oh man, this is what we can be. This is what we're building toward. And maybe start hearing a little bit more about this is what we are. This is what we are right now. This is what we're ready to do. I do think that those game day visits in the fall could play a factor. I think that him getting down him getting down to campus in the fall could be a factor. But I also think that Miami has a legitimate shot to kind of sell him and his family on the idea of staying in the state of Florida. Tampa is not, a ridiculous drive from Hard Rock Stadium. Guy like Dallas, he's able to bring his family in the night before, put them up in a nice hotel. Then, they go to the game afterward, and heck, if it's a morning game or a noon game, or excuse me, a noon game or so I'm still, my brain still works on Central Time like I grew up. So I'm used to those 11 a.m. kickoffs. But if it's, a noon game or a 3 o'clock game, I mean, heck, who's to say, they couldn't be back in Tampa that night. I think that that's appealing to him on a certain level. But at the same time, he's got a really good relationship with Dan Lanning. He really likes Oregon. There's a reason that he's committed there. And, the people that I've talked to, they've also kind of felt like it's going to be hard to pull him away because of how much he just likes the school that he committed to. So right now, Miami's in a dogfight, and this is going to have to be, kind of a long play. This is going to have to be a long recruitment. But we'll see what ends up happening.
All right. The other 5-star, DJ Pickett. This kid's so intriguing. He's a cornerback. But when you look at him, he's tall, he's lanky, he covers a ton of ground. He's got a cousin, Booker Pickett is at Miami. The Picketts have a history with Miami. Steven, I got to believe that DJ Pickett is, I'm not going to say definitely going to be a Miami Hurricane, but there's a great chance of that happening. What was the vibe you got from him as the weekend came to a conclusion?
Yeah, you're right. There is a great chance that can happen. And you know what's going to help Miami's chances even more? Winning. If they win, DJ Pickett will come here. I really, truly do believe that. Miami goes into the season, plays the way that they're expected to play. They go to the Swamp, and they look like they are the clear better team against Florida. If they're able to go into the Swamp and leave absolutely no doubt that Miami football is operating on a different level than some of their arch rivals. And remember, DJ Pickett is actually going to be at the Florida game in Gainesville. He's going to be there on a Florida weekend official visit. So Miami goes in there, they stomp the Gators. They have the crowd leaving in the third quarter. It gets really, really quiet early in the game. All of a sudden, I think that, completely takes the last of the air out of the tires of Florida. And I think that would put Miami in the driver's seat. Then, Miami gets off to, a 6-0 start or a 5-1 start, or what have you. The AP poll, we've already seen before, the AP poll does tend to, favor Miami a little bit. Once they really start churning, once the wheels really start churning, once they start winning the way that, it looks like they're capable of winning. I mean, heck, I remember whenever Al Golden had a team that cracked the top 10. When Miami can get that momentum early in the season, I think, being top 10, having a good ranking, all of this stuff is really, really easy to sell to, these impressionable recruits. And, for a guy who could be committing, around October, around the start of ACC play, if Miami meets those expectations that they have, man, I think that I think that he could absolutely end up a Hurricane. And I think that, Miami is betting on themselves a little bit to win this year. Booker Pickett's one of the guys that they're betting on themselves with.
All right, so those are the 5 stars. There were 5 other recruits on campus this weekend. We got stories on them all on the website this morning. If you haven't checked them out yet, make sure you do. Bring yourself up to speed. And we'll be moving on now to one more visit weekend here coming up next weekend. And at that point, I think we should have a reasonable outlook on where this recruiting class is going. I really do. So stay tuned all week for continued coverage of that. I want to take a break from recruiting for a minute, though, Stephen, because we have the continuation of our State of the Youth series that's been on the website the last couple of days and continues today. And there were a couple of those items that I did want us to discuss because I think they're really, really interesting. And the first talks about how year 3 for a coach can be a flashpoint for success. Not a guarantee for success. A lot of these guys never get over the hump. So it doesn't matter whether it's year 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. A lot of them never get over the hump. Some of them don't even make it to year 5, okay? Mario Cristobal is going to year 3. There are people around the country that are trying to put Mario Cristobal on what they habitually call a hot seat. Okay, Mario Cristobal is not on a hot seat. Let's make that clear right now for anybody that thinks he is. But this is a team that is believed to have significantly improved its roster, that is believed to be on the cusp of a breakthrough season this year. And what we addressed was the propensity for this to possibly happen in year 3. Matt Shodell, this one's all you. Talk to us a little bit about that year 3 concept and your thoughts on whether Miami will get over the hump this year.
Yeah, year 3 is important.
Come on, man! I gave you a 10-minute vacation just now.
Yeah, I enjoyed it actually. I was reading about some asteroids in outer space colliding with each other. I found that more interesting than what Steven was saying because guess what? Like recruiting to me now, it doesn't matter. Like DJ Pickett, they have to win games. No, they don't. They got to pay him NIL money. Like
I so strongly disagree with that.
It's wonderful, Steven. Because at the end of the day, NIL is what's driving recruiting, and it's a shame because in the old days, it was about winning. It was about which coach you had the best relationship with. It wasn't about who's giving me $600,000 instead of $250,000, And, maybe a recruit wants to go to a particular school. They always do. But guess who gets involved? The street agents are still there, believe it or not. The family members that want the money are still there. This is the real world, people, right? Recruits are just like regular people at the end of the day, right? Like those of you that have teenage children, imagine one of them is this superstar athlete and there's a bidding war going on with every top program in the country. And he says he wants to go to the school that's only paying him $200,000 to go there. But they've been winning games. He loves the coaches. He's comfortable. But another school's offering $800,000. As a parent, if you're in a family that's struggling monetarily, what's your advice to that child? Because guess what? 5% of these guys wind up in the NFL. Do you take the money or do you let him go where he wants to go? I'm taking the money. So, Steven, you can live in your little la-la land up there in Fort Lauderdale North that gets flooded. I live in the Grove where the water actually flows down a coral ridge into the sea, and I'm able to actually drive out of my house when it rains, unlike you. So don't be telling me you know everything about this and that, all right? Because let's face it, at the end of the day, you got to live somewhere where you can actually drive out of your house and see the real world, unlike this fantasy land that you're projecting where if they win games, everyone comes to Miami. That was the old days. As far as our Mario Cristobal, third year stuff, Mark Richt won 10 games in year 2. This was a story that was assigned to me by a higher power who goes by the pseudonym Gary Ferman, but I call the devil. And he's told me to write this story. So I wrote the freaking story, but it's nonsense because you need every single year to be better. And yet year 3 is a pivotal year for Mario, but not because the expectation is he's going to win 10 games, because they have a schedule that dictates he should win 10 games. Like I said last time on the show, if they have Florida's schedule, the over-under is 5.5, maybe 6.5 wins at best. And fans are irate, thinking the team's terrible. Like, the team's not great yet. The team's good enough. They play the easiest schedule I've ever seen at the University of Miami, and I've been alive for 80 less years than Gary Ferman, but still 50 years is a long time to be alive. And let me tell you something. I started researching the odds makers, okay, the people who should know what's going on. And I know it's way too early for these places to even place odds. But Miami-Florida State game has gone from Florida State being favored to now an even betting line, according to, I think it was DraftKings, okay? Louisville's favored by 1 against Miami. And every other game based on the metrics of the odds makers, Miami is favored to win. Miami right now on paper is going to finish 10-1-1. Okay? 10-1-1 based on the odds. And like, that's not because they're a great team. Like, I hate to tell you guys that. And year 3, of course, you want the coach to do better. But he better do better against this schedule. It's a cakewalk. I could coach this team and win 3 games. At least 3 games. And look at me. That's how easy the schedule is. 4 games. I'm going to say 4 games because I'm beating Duke. I got Ball State's a win for Matt Shodell. I got FAMU's a win for Matt Shodell. I'm going to take Wake Forest and Duke. I can coach those 4 games, Mario. You can take those 4 games off. I will still win them with this team. That's 4 wins. Now all I got to do is win another 4 games, 5 games. How hard is that out of the rest of the schedule? So anyway, easy schedule. He's going to have a big win differential of at least +2 from year 2 to year 3. To me, the question is year 4, because year 4, the schedule is going to be more difficult. And what you can't do is win 10 games in year 3 and then win 8 games in year 4, because then it's a disaster, right? Right, Stephen? Because you got to win, apparently, to get recruits, according to Stephen Wagner. And now all the recruits disappear, according to Stephen Wagner, in year 4. It's a disaster. But no, seriously, like, they're going to win in year 3. It's obvious from the schedule. It's obvious from the roster. You know, it's a better roster. Mario's done a great job in the portal this year compared to the last 2 years. The recruits, he always brings recruits in. We know this. He's a great recruiter. They're getting better. The team's going to out-talent everyone on this schedule except for Louisville and Florida State. And Florida State's at home, and I think Florida State's going to be worse than last year. So, you know, you better win 10 games, Mario. But now, and like I keep telling Gary, and he doesn't listen to me, like, I'm not worried about 2024. I know they're going to win 10 games in 2024. They better. 2025, 2026, you need to be building for those years. And taking 10, 15 portal guys every year who are gone after a year is not how you build. I want to see younger guys play this year, behind the starters, get ready to take over next year, and then keep on doing that cycle, man. That's how you win championships year after year, compete for championships year after year, period. And now I don't. Can I leave the show? Like, I have nothing else to talk about. I covered every base. Did I talk about outer space and the asteroids? I talked about everything there is. I'm done. Shodell's out.
All right. So year 3, I think we can all agree is a big year. Whether it's because of the easy schedule, the chance to win 10, 11 games, whether it's progression of the roster, whatever, Matt. Whatever whatever floats your boat, whatever makes you happy. But at least we agree that it's important, and it is, and this is a big move forward for every reason, including the recruiting aspect. Whether the kid wants the NIL money or whether he wants to play for a winner doesn't really matter. How about both? Let's walk and chew gum. Hey, Jay Collette, that was for you. Let's walk and chew gum, and let's have both to offer and see where it takes them. Okay, now another one of our State of the U is a good follow-up to this winning 10 games plus in 2023. And that subject deals with where the Miami Hurricanes stand in the college football landscape. Okay. And it's a big deal because Miami, which was once maybe the most relevant program in college football, the heartbeat of the college game at one point. And I know some of you that are watching may not be old enough yet to remember the experiences that we used to have when Miami was playing for national titles every year. And Matt Shodell and I were sitting at the Rose Bowl as in the early stages of CaneSport, sitting there thinking, oh my God, this is going to be the greatest. We're going to be at the Rose Bowl, the Sugar Bowl, the Fiesta every single year of our journalistic careers. And obviously it has not played out that way. Where does Miami sit in the college football landscape? Are the Hurricanes relevant? Stephen, let me start this question with you because we're both, I think, tired of hearing from Matt.
Thank you.
You know, you grew up in the state of Texas, okay? And obviously you heard about Miami, but you heard about everybody, Alabama, Ohio State, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So you're not bringing any bias at all into this discussion. Is Miami relevant right now in the college football landscape as we get ready to begin this 2024 football season?
I mean, right this second, I mean, yeah, they're kind of, I view it as kind of similar to what Texas A&M is. There's a lot of, they've recruited well. They've got some interesting pieces. Yeah, their roster should be top 25. We're going to put them in the top 25 preseason. But we constantly get into the actual season and we're disappointed. Something happens at some point. Everything falls apart. In year one for Mario, it was that freaking Middle Tennessee game where it felt like the fit just hit the shan. In year two for Mario, it was the Georgia Tech game. I mean, let's be real. Hey, that was a clean version. That was a clean version. The fit hit the shan. That
we're on
you
the,
can put that on
internet.
YouTube.
You can say the shit hit the fan. Nobody is gonna turn you into the FEC.
Hey, I think we, just in case we have some child listeners or anything like that, or Dad has Good Morning CaneSport playing in the background while he's making breakfast for the family. Just to be safe. But excuse me. Every year for Mario, each of Mario's first 2 years, there's been, they're a top 25 team. Their roster's pretty intriguing. It looks like they've got a promising quarterback. I don't think receiver's going to be that bad. The offensive line's going to be good. This and that and the other thing. Oh man, Miami should. But the fact is, Miami hasn't. That's just a simple fact. And hype is fantastic. It sells season tickets during the off season. It creates buy-in around the program. It gets fans on board. It can get students on board. It can, really, really help your attendance early in the year. But bottom line is, by week, 6 or 7 of the season, everyone more or less knows about what you are. They have an idea of, oh man, this team is, a contender. This team's a team that's going to go, 7-6. This team can play for the ACC title. So right now, I don't know if I would necessarily say that Miami is relevant because so far Miami hasn't really done anything outside of that one season with Mark Richt. I think, in order for Miami to truly be relevant and for us to say that, and for us to have this conversation, yes, Miami absolutely is a major player in the college football landscape. They have to go out and they have to prove it on the field. I know that sounds so cliche, but if they don't win games, none of it matters about us saying, oh, they're so relevant. Well, they had a great recruiting class and they brought in a fantastic quarterback. Oh, the program foundation. Well, at some point, it ultimately just comes down to, are you having
a seizure, Stephen? Do we need to have a wellness check over there? Who are you trying to impersonate?
Matt, I've had enough.
Howard Cosell? Who is that?
Matt, I've had enough of you. I was about to I was about to have a seizure earlier with your little, all that matters about these days is NIL and
that was my voice. That was my voice you were imitating. I was wondering, okay, it was me.
Then why are all of the 5 stars still going to Ohio State and Georgia and Alabama? And hey, guess what? The schools that were recruiting really, really well at the start, they're still getting all of the players. Who also is benefiting from that? Miami. Because whenever Miami is good, Miami actually gets all of the players that they want. Miami's going to be fine. Miami's one of those schools that should always be able to get those recruits, regardless of whether or not there's NIL, just like the Alabamas and the Georgias and the Ohio States of the world. The schools that are in the top 5, guess what? They're in the top 5 for a reason. It's because they have coaches, and the players say, man, look at that coach. He's really, really good at developing players and putting players in the NFL. Because you know what? The smart kids, the really good kids that I do not think are going to bust at the college level, you know what they care about? They don't care about $600,000 that they might get in college. They want the $6 million that they can get in their first NFL contract. They want, first round guaranteed money. They want that kind of money because that is actual life-changing money. A few $100,000 in college, it's nice. It's very nice to have. It can definitely help a lot, but it's not life-changing money. The money you can get in the NFL, that is life-changing money. That can change the lives for everyone in your family. And the really, really smart kids, aka the Jeremiah Smiths of the world, they care a lot more about, can you make me a first-round pick? Can you get me a first-round NFL contract as a draft pick? Because that is what I really, really want. But anyway, I digress. I just want to circle back around to that and point out how wrong Matt Shodell is. But now, coming back to the is Miami relevant thing, I mean, at some point, you can talk all about recruiting and, the foundation and the future and, all this and that is promising, whatever. Ultimately, it doesn't matter if you win. At some point, you have to actually win on the field. And until Miami wins on the field, I feel like I'm having a hard time saying they are currently relevant. I will say right now, I think they have an awesome chance to be extremely relevant this year. I think that this team, it is absolutely possible this team wins 12 games. There is absolutely a universe in which this is a 12-win team. They're either in I guess I can't say they're either in a New Year's Six or they're in the CFP anymore because all of the New Year's Six games are in the CFP. But I think there's an awesome chance that they are right there in the mix for the ACC championship. I think there's an awesome chance that they actually play for the ACC title. And I think that there is a really, really, really good chance that they can make the expanded playoff. I love Miami's odds to go ahead and make the expanded playoff this year. But we can sit here and talk about what Miami should do until the cows come home. I mean, the facts are we're going to find out what they can do whenever we actually play that game in the swamp at Florida.
Well, it took about 20 minutes, but great answer because I agree with pretty much everything you said, including the shots that you took at Matt. But
thank you. If Matt can rant, I can rant, damn it.
I agree. Listen, I mean, I've been accused of being a sunshine pumper, making crazy pro-Miami predictions. Yes, I go to South Beach with my cane shades on, no argument, whatever. But Miami's not relevant yet, okay? Miami has an opportunity to be relevant, and it starts August 31st when they walk into the swamp in Gainesville because people are going to be watching that game because Miami's getting hype, and Miami is one of the teams to watch going into the season. And people are going to want to see, could it possibly be real? After all these years of disappointment and underachievement, and throw every adjective you want at it, is Miami going to be for real this year? And they have a chance to be because they have a quarterback, okay? So people are going to be tuning in August 31st. They're going to want to see that quarterback. They're going to want to see the Hurricanes and how they fare up there in Gainesville. If Miami can put an impressive game together and come out with a victory, they are going to suddenly be relevant because they are going to be one of the more exciting subjects and topics in college football if it plays out the way that it can. But right now, as we sit here in the early summer, training camp still, a month and a half or so away? No, not relevant at all. Not one bit. And that's because of the past 20 years. But anyway, our State of the U series continues with those subjects. Make sure you do check them out. All right, but before we go today, let me circle back to recruiting because in addition to the visits that took place this weekend, there was another O-line, D-line camp on campus. There was a massive 7-on-7 tournament on campus, and there was a ton of evaluation going on. Among the evaluations taking place were a pair of 2026 tight ends, one by the name of Caden Prothro, the other by the name of Evan Jacobson. Big time on Miami's radar for the 2026 class. Both have offers. They were evaluated on campus. Stephen cornered them, talked to them, and we will have stories on them on the website today. But Stephen, rather than just focus on those two alone, aside from the visits, you also got to spend some time out watching the 7-on-7 and the O-line, D-line camp. Just give us a quick synopsis of the level of talent you saw and what stood out to you.
Yeah, well, first off, I want to clarify with Prothro and Jacobson. Those two actually came down for full-blown unofficial visits. They did not participate in a camp or anything like that. They were just regular old unofficial visitors. They're guys that, Cody Waddell, the tight ends coach, is really, really interested in, and they're kind of trying to get a jump on 2026 tight ends. They're hoping to go really, really big and land a whale in that class. But coming back around to the actual camps that we were watching on Sunday. Overall, I mean, it was South Florida's best, and it was kind of what we expected. I will admit, I was a little bit disappointed that we didn't see some more of the stars that, play or attend some of the schools that were at this massive 7-on-7 tournament. Because a lot of those guys are actually 2025 guys who were on their own official visits while everything was going on. Orlando Jones was at the event, and Vernell Brown goes there. The top 35 overall player in the country. He was in Miami for a midweek official visit earlier in the week. As big of a receiver priority as they come. He was one of the guys who was there. Homestead is another school that has a lot of really, really good, promising talent. One of the guys up there is Cortez Mills. A four-star receiver. Miami's been very, very heavily after. He wasn't there either because he was also on an unofficial visit. I'm pretty sure he was at Oklahoma this weekend. There were still a pretty solid number of players who did show up. Some of the guys from Miami Central, Ezekiel Marcelin and Amari Wallace, two guys who have now both taken official visits to Miami, and two guys who I feel very, very good about their chances of being Hurricanes. They both came down. There was a lot of 2026 talent there, including Dia Bell. I think he's the number 14 overall prospect, number 2 or number 3 quarterback in the country, a guy who I am incredibly high on in this class, a guy who Miami has been right there in the middle for, trying to scrap and claw away. At Malachi Toney at American Heritage, Miami's 4-star 2026 receiver commit, bunch of other players who are listed as 4-star prospects but may not actually be currently being heavily recruited by Miami. Then another guy who I feel like we absolutely have to mention is Calvin Russell. Some sites have him listed as a 5-star prospect in that 2026 class and as a top 10 recruiting target. I mean, man, he's another guy. He's as big as anyone for Miami in that 26 class. And he's one of those dudes who, you hear about him and he makes waves. He is one of those 2026 guys where even now, even while we're still, focusing on 2025 guys on their official visits, he is one of those players in next year's class who is big enough that I definitely think he moves the needle, and I think he's going to be moving the needle for a very long time. He's playing for Teddy Bridgewater over there at Miami Northwestern. But overall, I mean, you're at a 7-on-7 tournament in South Florida. There's going to be players there.
All right, so that's going to do it for today for Good Morning CaneSport. There's a whole bunch of other stuff on the website. We can't talk about all of it this morning, but make sure you check that out. Check out the continuation of our Top 50 countdown, where we are looking at different players every single day. We'll be talking more about that this week, and then we'll be building towards another recruiting weekend coming up on Friday. So tons going on at CaneSport.com. If you are not yet a subscriber to our site, please head on over, become a subscriber, join our community of fans. We got a great group at CaneSport.com. You will not be sorry if you do that. And if you're on YouTube right now and you're watching the show on YouTube, hit your subscribe and like buttons. It does help us with the algorithms at YouTube in growing our audience. So for Stephen Wagner and Matt Shodell, I'm Gary Ferman. Thanks again for joining us, and we will see you next time, everybody.